Guys, welcome back to Of Stone and Clay. I'm Taylor Church. This is episode 81. We are here with Jason Davies, my brother from Instagram.
Yeah. Yeah.
I appreciate you coming on, man.
Hey, I appreciate you. You know, it's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
Like, I appreciate this finally happening.
Yeah.
I appreciate you hanging in there with me.
Of course. Hey, it's often a little bit of a runaround to get on the same schedule and stuff. But yeah. I think you reached out to me originally, and you've been on some podcasts talking about men's mental health, and that is it seems like that's kind of become a passion, an obsession, just an important part of your life. What was it that, I mean, I'm sure you've had your struggles with mental health, but what was it that made you decide, like, I want this to be kind of maybe one of the main purposes of my life is to kind of spread this message and to talk about this more and get the awareness out?
Yeah. Yeah. It was going through it, you know, having a breakdown, having a mental breakdown. It's this weird connotation sometimes that people are like, oh, yeah, you had a mental breakdown. Like, it still has this almost stigma to it.
Yeah.
And I've always been someone who's like happy-go-lucky. Yeah. You know, I'm glass half full kind of guy. Optimism is, you know, great. And just one of those trying to always be happy guys and smiling. And then when you go through something and then you see others go through it too. Yeah. There was just something internally within me. Like, it almost pulled that empathy out of me that I couldn't, something about it just, I couldn't internalize anymore. I couldn't keep it in. Yeah. And I tried to for months, actually. You know, once I righted the ship in my own life and kind of got where a little bit more steady, firmer foundation for myself again, I was like, you know what? No, it's not for me. Yeah. You know, I want to open this box. Other people are doing it. Like, they can do that. They can speak to it. And then I don't know if you've ever had a feeling or something just keep coming back to you. Yeah. Something that just keeps saying, no, it's for you. People should hear what you have to say, or people could benefit even if it's one person. Yeah. Right. And so finally I was like, okay, I'll just start an Instagram page and just start talking and sharing other stories. And because it's not just all about my story. And that's one of the coolest things I think about this, where we're at right now with men's mental health specifically, maybe even mental health in general. Yeah. Is there's become a lot more awareness around it. Yeah. A lot more thought behind it. And so it was one of these things where I was like, if I could help one other guy, if he's going through anything remotely close to what I went through, then that's what I want to leave behind. Yeah. Like, hey man, how can I help you? Yeah.
Did you feel, when you were going through it, did you feel like you had anyone you could really talk to about it? Or was it all kind of so new to you? You were like, I don't know how to even express what I'm going through.
Yeah. All new. And it's funny because I didn't know until I knew what it was. Like, I look back on my life and I was like, oh, that's anxiety. Yeah. Because a lot
of people grow up in their teenage years, you know, they start to struggle with anxiety or depression or both, or other, you know, mental health issues. And, you know, sometimes some event triggers it or exacerbates it. But yeah, it sounds like you didn't really start to feel the brunt of it until you're like deep into adulthood. Yeah. Like, you already have a family. Yeah. You're already married. You have 5 kids. Yeah. So looking back on it now, do you feel like you had struggled with things for a lot of years without realizing it, or maybe just on a much smaller scale?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. I look back even, you know, teenage years, and look back early 20s and even before kids, and then having kids, and just as it, you know, like you stated, as you get older, and it's unfortunate because I think that's one of the other things I hope I can try and help people with, is bring more awareness to, hey, if you're feeling like this, it's okay.
Yeah.
Let's call a spade and let's hit it head on.
Yeah.
You don't have to suffer in these things silent. You don't have to feel these things in silence. You don't, I think for me it was unknown. And then it got to a point of like just complete overwhelmed.
Yeah.
With all the, anxiety and depression and things that I just had never really thought about before until it all came down.
Yeah. So what was sort of the impetus for this, for lack of a better term, a mental breakdown?
Yeah. It was, you think about life in general. Life's hard as it is.
Yeah.
And it's a lot. And so you get to this point where you're doing all that you can, and then you add the internal, like that, what am I trying to say here? The intrusiveness of it. Those intrusive thoughts of yourself of you're not living up to being the best dad. You're not living up to these things. You start to kind of nitpick at yourself and pick yourself apart.
Yeah.
We are our own worst critics. I say that all the time because,
I've given myself 2 thumbs down before.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not a good feeling, and I have too. And so it's one of these things where what led to it was not being aware as to my feelings internally, not being able to say, hey, this is anxiety. Let's work through it.
Yeah. This
is a panic attack. Let's work through it. Hey, I think you're going through some seasonal depression.
Yeah.
Let's work through it. And then it all came to a crashing halt when there was a point where it was a perfect storm of just a mess. It was just so overloaded and overwhelmed in life that, I learned early in therapy which made sense for me, and hopefully it could for others, when there's like 4 pillars in your life or 4 quadrants, right? You have like, for me, it was spiritual. You had like work or social aspect. You had physical, and then mental, like these quadrants. And when life becomes unbalanced, it's because one quadrant is getting more attention than the others.
Yeah.
Or none of them are getting attention because they're all just a mess and you can't really put anything together.
Yeah.
And that was at a point where none of them were getting any type of attention. Growing up Christian, I had stopped doing the things that kind of grounded me in life. Physical, I was at a point where we just had newborn twins and I wasn't sleeping at all.
Yeah.
Like, I'd always tried to get up with my wife with the other kids and help out, like, hey, how can I help you? Do the guy thing. It's like, oh, I'll grab a bottle every once in a while.
Right.
But with twins, it was different because it was me with one baby and her with one baby. And I learned right then and there how important sleep was to me.
Yeah.
Even just a little bit, because it was like 0 sleep. You'd set an alarm every 2 hours and you were up.
Yeah.
Switching off feeding babies and things like that. And so the physical aspect, I've always been an active guy, and I couldn't do anything active. I had 0 energy. So those 2 quadrants all of a sudden were out of sync. And then all of a sudden you have the mental side. It has blown me away to learn how much sleep deprivation is a real thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And when we're tired, if you've ever been tired and you just feel off that day, or you're just a little bit more agitated, more grumpy, the mental side, I started to prioritize different things, such as like work. That was another quadrant for me, or social. And all of a sudden, work for me, you go on paternity leave for 6 to 8 weeks, which is awesome. Spend time with the family, but on those times you can't talk to anybody at work.
Yeah.
And us guys, I feel like we put such a big part of our identity as providers, right? Into our work.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden that's taken away. And so I'm trying to shift through some things, and there was some changes at work that had happened that I couldn't talk to anybody about because you can't really do that legally when you're on paternity leave.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, everything, like I said, was a perfect storm of nothing was balanced. Everything was completely out of balance. And I come back off of paternity leave one day, and it was a couple weeks in, and I'd gotten in my line of work, we have managers, and I got a new manager, and we sit down and have a conversation. He just told me what a terrible job I was doing.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at that point, I went home that night, and I basically just fell apart.
Mm-hmm.
It was probably the darkest, most alone, empty, just compression type of feeling. It's hard to describe of just how it felt to literally just have everything. It felt like, that analogy of the rug getting pulled out from underneath you, and just flat on my back, and just nothing mattered.
Yeah.
Family didn't matter, job didn't matter, physical, spiritual, no connection to God, nothing mattered.
Mm-hmm.
And here I was alone in my mind, but externally nothing had really happened.
Right.
I think that's in the mental health space, that's one of the hardest things to deal with, is that to that person, everything is gone.
Yeah.
Everything's a mess.
It feels catastrophic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everything is, it's just this and this and this and this. But if you take those binoculars off, it's okay.
Right.
I mean, now, don't get me wrong. There are some things that truly do happen in life, such as if you lost, I can't imagine if I lost a child.
Right.
I have friends who have lost young children, and I don't even try to put myself in their position because I just can't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's something that I'll never be, knock on wood, I won't ever face. And so when you have these times, and so everything had just fallen apart for me mentally. In my world, it's all gone. And so I sat there that night and just fetal position sobbed, man.
Yeah.
Like uncontrollable.
Are you normally easy to cry?
I can, if I can get emotional with a song or some type of nice play every once in a while, a good movie. So I have that little emotional side to me, but this was the first time in a long, long time that I could even remember that it just
like sobbing.
Yes, yeah, uncontrollable. And as my wife sitting next to me that night, she's like, "What's happening?"
Yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah.
I come home from a meeting, I just kind of go upstairs in the room and just crumble, and she's just taken aback because did we ever really talk about how I was doing before this, right? No, because we're guys.
Yeah.
We don't talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
And if we do, it's like, I'm fine.
Right.
I still do it to this day sometimes. I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm good. We put on that front.
Yeah.
We're good. And so here we are, literally on the floor, and I'm just spouting off things. I got to quit my job. My manager hates me. I'm doing a terrible job. I got to find a whole new career. I feel terrible. I just started to just like my life was unraveling, and there it was, just boom, boom, boom. And that was at a point where, when I say that's one of the things that I hope no one ever feels, and I would love to help guys any way possible to stay away from that moment. That's it for me.
Yeah.
Like that's what I'm trying to do, and we're trying to do is bring more light to this.
Yeah.
But then also there's a whole other aspect of, okay, now I'm in that hole. Now what?
Right.
Right. And there for maybe 2 weeks, I didn't get out of bed, man. Like, I'd get out of bed, but
You were still on paternity?
No, I was supposed to be back working, and I was, but it was every moment gave me panic attacks or anxiety.
Yeah, you're just a zombie.
To a level of, for a couple of days, I didn't get out of bed. I didn't do anything. I didn't go to work. And I remember one of my kids coming in and asking Mom, like, "Hey, Mom, why is Dad still in bed?
Yeah.
Why is he not getting out of bed?"
Yeah.
I'll never forget that. I'll never forget, because I heard it. I was right there.
Right. But you don't even have the strength really to respond.
No, and that's the thing of anxiety and depression, like to a crippling effect.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I think other people, when it's like, "Oh, you have depression? Oh, just, are you okay? How can I help?" It's like, or, "Oh, you have really bad anxiety." For me, I've come to learn when I feel anxious and I'm having a little bit of more of anxiety in my life, it's paralyzing.
Yeah.
It's like you have so much on your plate to do, and I haven't done one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And that was another point where a big learning curve for me is trying to help others when they mention these buzzwords: depression, anxiety, panic attack, these things, trying to help them figure out ways to work through them.
Yeah.
Right. So here we are, man. We're just stalemate, and that's at a point where my wife's like, "Hey, we need some serious help. You got to start going to therapy. Let's get you on medication." I never done any of those before.
Yeah. So at this point, were you so broken? Did you feel humbled and open, or were you still kind of embarrassed and like, I don't want everyone to know this. I don't want to fully tell my wife everything I'm feeling and thinking. Or were you just kind of like, "Yeah, dude, I'm done. Let me submit. Let me surrender"?
Yeah. Good question. At the beginning, I was still, I can't tell her that.
Mm-hmm.
If she knows how I truly feel.
Yeah. Because you probably feel guilty as well, because you're like, here she is, like, taking care of these young babies, and like, who am I to be like, I need to take care of this family. Like, I don't have time to be mentally ill.
Yeah.
I don't have time to break down.
Yep.
My kids can't see me break down. And so, yeah, you just feel guilty for even having your feelings. And then that exacerbates the already horrible feelings you have, probably.
Oh, absolutely. You nailed it. And that was that's something that is, I think, still to this day, right now, for a lot of men, we're not going to tell that to our girlfriend or our wife or, our significant other. Like, we're at a point still where it's like, if they truly knew how I felt, that just makes me feel worse.
Yeah.
Because now I'm adding to their plate, just like you said.
Yeah. Now I'm this weak provider.
Yeah.
I'm this person that they can't look to for safety.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so that was at the beginning, absolutely, that first week or two, there were still some things I was just internalizing and still just not fully open.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But I did get to the point where it was like, you throw your hands up, and it's just, you've had enough.
Yeah.
You've kind of had enough of how you realize that there's this point of, I can't help myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you get there, and I it's hard because you don't want people to get there, but it's almost like you can only, you got to get yourself there somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's you sit in that mindset for as long as it takes. And sometimes that's not good.
Yeah.
And so you try and figure out, okay, what's the next step?
Mm-hmm.
How do we do this? So you start with two things, right? For me, I started with going to see a therapist, and I'd never thought about that before.
Was that a big, like, was your wife pushing you to do that, or was that your idea?
It was hers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
Were you resistant?
I wasn't resistant. at that point, I was like you said, it was like, I need some help.
Yeah.
I am.
Can we backtrack a tiny bit?
Yeah.
Did you grow up with a really like communicative family, like emotionally communicative?
No, it's a good point.
Yeah.
A little bit, but not to any type of point where it was remotely like you could we talked about everything, and we were just so open about everything, and
a lot of things kind of went under the rug.
Yeah. And and don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of love in the house,
right? Still
a lot of joy, but we never really got down into the weeds very deep.
I feel like, and this isn't every family, but I feel like my family dynamic growing up was pretty darn open and communicative. But I think that's compared to my parents, their childhood and their adolescence was way less open, right? But I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, but when I have kids and have a family, I want to be way more open than like it was at my house. And it's not because things were taboo or like discouraged. It was just, I think they were one step removed from their parents wanting to improve and be more open, but I want to be even more open, right? So maybe a similar case with you. It's like, it's not like you were in this emotional prison, right?
Yeah.
It just, your parents were doing the best they could and were probably more open than their parents were.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. It definitely has that kind of timeline, right? Because now, to your point, with our kids, it's like, hey, let's talk about this stuff. You can tell us literally anything, or we'll just bring something up and they kind of giggle about it or whatever. But we definitely try and do that.
Yeah.
So,
well, and the cool thing is you've been, I mean, it doesn't feel cool, but you've been so humbled by your experience, like, sobbing uncontrollably in the fetal position. Like all of a sudden you can be like, yeah, if my kids come to me with something crazy, like, who am I to be like you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Let's dig into it.
Yep.
Because the last thing you want is for your kids to feel like you felt.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's, as a parent, that's all you want. Like you want that safe space.
Yeah.
You want them to feel they can come with you anything.
Yeah.
And to your point, it feels like it continues to be a little more open as each generation continues to realize, hey, we didn't, previous generations, we didn't really talk about that stuff.
Yeah.
And now it's like, oh, well, we've gone through some things and let's talk about it.
Yeah. So, okay. So you start therapy.
Yeah.
What is that like?
Honestly, man, therapy was good. I wish more people, therapy has so many synonyms, and one of them is truly about healing. It's a healing process. And I feel like as a society, we're getting a lot better at, you have online therapy now. You have Zoom therapy. You can dip in and dip out.
There are apps.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's apps for therapy. So I feel like it's going in a good direction. Because for me, therapy it's not, and maybe some experiences are like this, but for me, I always just try and speak to my experiences personally. Like it wasn't someone just sitting there like, lean back and just you feel judged or whatever, right? You just sit down and have conversations.
Yeah.
And you're having conversations that I don't know what it is. If it's that the person you're talking to doesn't have backstory on you.
Yeah.
That the person you're talking to doesn't have any previous history, judgment, feelings, whether that's true or not for other people, like your family or anything like that. But in your mind, in my mind, that it's just, I'm going to say, and we'll get a response and we'll continue just to talk.
Yeah.
And so when you're sitting here in this mindset of everything has changed in my life, everything has crumbled, Nothing's going right. Everything is a disaster mentally. And you start talking about it, it helps to pull things out for perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It helps take those zoomed in binoculars off of, this teeny little grain of sand and try and zoom out and see the beach.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I started doing that, and then I learned about, hey, how, let's draw a 4 quadrants on a piece of paper and talk about each one of these specifically.
Yeah.
What are you doing spiritually? Because for me, that was something, I had mentioned that's wasn't there anymore. Was there, but not really. Or what are you doing physically? Or what are you doing for work or social aspect?
Just everything was neglected.
Yeah. And so it was learning step by step of those. And that's another big piece that I wish more men, and hopefully we do, is feel more comfortable about it. But that's the hard part, right? Like, we've gotten so used to not wanting to be that burden.
Yeah.
Not wanting to be that added view of weak or vulnerable. Or it's crazy to me. One of the biggest eye-opening things when I first started opening up on Instagram or online and having conversations, and how many the top comments per se was, I opened up to a woman once and I'll never do it again.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. I went up to a woman once and it was used against me in an argument.
Yeah.
Never again.
Right.
All the tops of the tops. And I'm not saying it's women's fault. I'm just saying that's like context to where we are as men currently of, I tried to and it didn't work.
Yeah.
I'm going to put that lid back on.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if I'm going to open it again.
Yeah. I think, especially among single men.
Yeah, totally.
I think this is where a lot of guys get it wrong. I think because women want to view their men as these strong figures, right? Whatever that means,
sure,
right? Whether it's physically or emotionally, whatever. They want them to be strong and have some masculine energy, right? Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean they don't want them to be open and emotional. The problem is, I think some guys, they start with emotionality, and a woman can view that as weakness if she doesn't have any other context. That's just all, that's the starting point, right? Mm-hmm. So in my opinion, this isn't clinical stuff here, but I feel like in the beginning, when you connect with a girl, you don't put all your emotions up front, but as you gain her trust and connection, then openness is everything, right? It has to be there. But I think, I think some guys will lead with their emotions, thinking, oh, girls love emotion, right? And then, they get rejected or whatever, and they think, oh, it's because I opened up. And it's it could be a million reasons why you got rejected, right? It might have nothing to do with the fact that you shared some personal experience or you teared up or something, right?
Sure.
So I think that's just another misnomer. I think guys and women struggle with it too, but guys really struggle with rejection a lot of times.
Yeah.
And they internalize it, and it becomes, women become the enemy when it's maybe we look at ourselves a little bit and ask ourselves, okay, if we're constantly being rejected, is that really the woman's fault?
Yeah. Yeah. Where's the common denominator?
Yeah. Right? And maybe you're chasing after the wrong type of women.
Yeah.
But there's probably a good chance that, maybe you have enough qualities that you're getting your foot in the door, you're getting on dates, you're starting relationships or whatever. But if you're continually the one being rejected, maybe you look in the mirror a little bit.
Yeah. Some internal reflection of as to what's going on. Yeah. It's a great point, because you try and sit back and you say, okay, that's always something I've tried to do more recently, last, how long has it been now? Almost 2 years of, building back up and being more self-aware of how can I, it's almost like the typical gym saying of me versus me, right?
Yeah.
How can I help myself to then better others? And that's where, like you said, a lot of guys nowadays, it's internalized maybe too soon or too harsh or too quick, right? So,
yeah, I also think a lot of, because I'd like to dig into why is it so hard for guys to open up compared to girls, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of it starts when we're young, like we're told like to be tough.
Oh, absolutely.
And to not cry.
Yep.
And like there's no crying in baseball.
No,
Whatever,
I'm a baseball coach. And
yeah.
It's like, hey boys, let's rub some dirt on it, man. You're
right.
okay.
Yeah, but it's hard because it's like, as a coach, you can't be like, hey guys, let's cry today at practice.
No.
Like, no, we got to get some work done.
Yeah, no way. Absolutely.
We got to grit our teeth.
Yeah.
But, and even like I'm trying to go back into the catacombs of my memory and remember like in middle school, a lot of times, you see a girl leaving class and she's crying and her friends are hugging her or something. And you're like, oh, something sad probably happened. You see a guy crying, you're like, what's his problem?
Yeah, what's this sissy doing over here? Like it's always one of those things where I think it's, this too, I feel is very generational. This too, I feel like is very passed down from, just like you said, there's no crying in baseball, like with all the sports, right? In the sports world, you get hurt in a sport, and it was like when I was playing like Little League football, hey, if you had a cast on and you can go play, awesome. Like you're considered tough.
Yeah.
Like there was that masculinity, and that's a big topic right now is the whole masculinity thing, which is another huge rabbit hole that. We could go down, but with, hey, rub some dirt on it.
Yeah.
Take it like a man. And it's one of these things where it taught us to internalize. It taught us to simply, okay, I'm not going to show that because if I perceived as weak. Yeah. I'm perceived as not as tough as the guy next to me.
Right.
And so when we do that, there's no effort or want or need seen to now externalize feelings. Yeah. Because it's for since we were little, like you said, we've just buried things. Yeah. And so as we get old, it's almost like we have to retrain ourselves in a way, mentally and emotionally, to now be able to open up that door a little bit. Whether we want to or not. Yeah. I think it's kind of the biggest thing. Yeah. Yeah. It's, man, it's a tough balance because I think there's a lot you can learn in sports, like a ton. Yeah, right? Absolutely. And I do think there is value in being tough. Yeah. And gritting your teeth and getting through something. But that doesn't mean you need to put all your emotions inside and never address them, right? Sometimes it's time and place, maybe in the middle of a basketball game, you don't go to the bench and break down, Probably not not the best time and place but maybe you learn, man, how come if I'm playing bad in this game, it's affecting me so much emotionally? Yeah. Why is my performance on the field so connected with my self-worth? But I think as a kid, it's like, how do you articulate those feelings? Oh, you know? Absolutely. And that comes from, I think a parent needs to know, like, but a lot of times parents don't know. They don't know how to articulate those feelings, right? But I wish, like, I feel like only recently in my life, because I still play a lot of competitive sports, I feel like only recently am I doing a better job. I still struggle with it, but a better job at not connecting my performance with my self-worth, right? And I would just sometimes spiral if I played really bad or we lost and I felt like it was my fault. It would all start becoming connected to other quadrants of my life, right? Me thinking, oh, I lost this game, and you know what? I also, like, this girl just broke up with me, and
financially I'm not doing great. Like it started to connect and I started to think, oh, my life just sucks in general.
Yeah.
When it's like, dude, you just had a bad game.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
this has nothing to do with your self-worth. This has nothing to do with your value to humanity.
Yeah.
Your friends don't view you less. Your family doesn't view you less. But when you're younger, I think it's so hard to wrap your head around those ideas.
Oh, it totally is. We, even with, we have a daughter who's in competitive soccer,
Mm-hmm.
and even in her games currently, she'll come home from a bad game and just be destroyed.
Yeah.
And then it holds on, and they're kids.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They're working through so many emotions.
Right.
And their hormones and their changes and all these things. But then, like you said, with the parent, like me as a parent, I'm trying to work through this kind of new feelings and emotions with her.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, it's one of these things where I'm trying to also help myself and trying to, pull those things out too, or trying to work through these things. And like you said, there's sports teaches us great things.
Yeah.
But and you also said it's a fine balance. And I don't know, not a lot of us know how to do it. And I'm still trying to figure that out as well.
Right.
Right.
I think I've, for me, a big part of it, and it's with sports, but I think you could connect this with your career ambitions, with any of your hobbies or passions or things that you put a lot of time towards, right? That maybe sometimes your self-worth is tied up in it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think for me, when I took a step back and tried to really just enjoy every part of the sport and not just, I'm happy if I win.
Yeah.
I'm happy if I perform well.
Yeah. And if then, right?
Right. But let me be happy and enjoy training and practice and weightlifting and the camaraderie and the teammates and the relationships with the coaches and just every aspect of it. Then it becomes like, oh, I love 95% of this game, and the 5% losing I really hate and it sucks.
Yeah.
And I feel bad. But that 5% I can deal with.
Yeah.
But when it's like, the sport is 98% bad feelings, it's like I shouldn't even be playing,
And you bring up a great point with what we do as men with our lives, and we tie it to a career.
Mm-hmm.
That happened. That was part of me in my whole mental space. Because what I do, I am in medical sales.
Mm-hmm.
And in medical sales, it's very competitive. And it's also very high strung.
Yeah.
And you need to know your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're working side by side with physicians.
Yeah. And
right?
It's always changing.
Always changing. And you need to be on your toes. You need energy, and there are certain aspects of, like you said, like I wasn't enjoying every piece.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you don't enjoy every piece, it's like, okay, compartmentalize some of these.
Yeah.
I hate this part of the job, but I love all these other parts.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I do it.
Yeah.
But in a mental state of just nitpicking, like you said, and just seeing it at such a granular level, I think we all have those days. It's like, man, I hate this. It's like, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah.
Man, what? This is what I chose?
Yeah.
But then, and my wife's great at it. She'll talk to me and be like, pull me back into some perspective pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what do you like about it?
Yeah.
Well, I like this. Well, I like this. I like this. And all of a sudden it's like, okay, it's not so bad.
Right.
Right. But I tied my worth to performance.
Mm-hmm.
I tied my worth to paycheck.
Right.
I tied my worth to all these things that at the end of the day, if, I passed away tomorrow, man, my job would fill my position in 2 weeks.
Yep.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think about, I'm putting all time and attention into that. If I passed away tomorrow, my wife and my kids, that's a hole that won't be filled. I don't know if ever or somewhat, if another, husband and dad came along, which I'd hope.
Yeah.
But that would be such a different detriment. So why am I not putting more effort and time and energy and attention into those things?
Yeah.
One of the biggest things on my healing journey is my dad gave me a book called The Power of Now, and it's by Eckhart Tolle is the author, and it is literally about finding present. And for me, I have always been such a in the future guy. Growing up, I'd ask, "Hey, what's for dinner?" And I'm just eating breakfast.
Yeah.
And my mom and dad would just be like, "What?
Yeah.
Jace, eat your breakfast."
Yeah.
And I've always been that way, and I don't know why. I think it's like me just looking forward to something in the day.
Yeah.
And I had taken it to such an extreme, learning in the healing journey and in therapy and things, and reading the book of finding your present state. Like literally, right now, you and I are having a conversation, and who knows what will happen in an hour from now? Who knows? It's the future.
Yeah.
An hour ago, we were both in separate places, and that's the past, and that's gone. And we can learn from it, and we take our things from it. But what literally is now in the present, and trying to have the mental capacity to be there. And it is so hard.
Yeah.
It's so hard because everything wants our attention.
Yeah.
All the time. Everything wants our time and energy, especially now with like our phones and social media and the TV and sports and you name it, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, when I pulled back the view and said, okay, where is my time? When I started to read that book and said, why do I, it talks about the ego.
Yeah.
Not my ego, but the ego. Everybody has an ego. But it kind of opens this box as to where, and this is where I fought speaking out about men's mental health for so long. Because the ego was like, well, people are going to judge you.
Yeah.
People are going to say things, whether it's good or bad. People are going to know that you struggled. People are going to know that this, that, and the other. And all of a sudden that just, starts to layer on you. And that's why I fought it for so long.
Yeah.
I realized during reading this book, and then you realize living in the present, and I now try and put so much time and effort in present. So at work, I'm there, right? But when I'm at home, I try and put that phone away.
Yeah.
Set it on the counter or on the table on silent, and hey, I get like 2-3 hours with the kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And trying to find that balance. One of the most viral videos I saw this year was this dad. I think he was here in Utah, and he's coming home from work and he hates his job, despises his job. And he's like, I just don't know how much longer I can hang on. And you can just tell he's just breaking down.
Yeah.
But he says, but this is why I'm still here. And he turns the phone around, and as he's pulling in the driveway, his little girl's just jumping up and down.
Yeah.
And just ecstatic to see dad.
Right.
And he just breaks down sobbing.
Yeah.
And I watched that and I was like wiping tears from my eyes. Because it's one of these things where as men, we tie so much to value. Like we've talked about. But at the end of the day, that's where each of us have to decide and get to decide, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Where is that attention? Where's our time? Where it's your life, right? And I think that's another part of society right now. It's okay, if it's my life, then why can't I live it the way I want to? Well, because I have to do this job that doesn't pay me enough. I have to do this, that, and the other that I just don't want to do, and it's trying to find that balance of, finding your anchors in life. Those, if you've ever heard of non-negotiables, right?
Yeah.
What are your daily anchors or non-negotiables that are going to keep you at a okay balance of in life?
Yeah.
Mentally, if not anything else.
Yeah.
And you try and do that. That was one of the biggest things I also learned in therapy. When we go back to therapy, there's so many great things, right? You learn things about yourself.
Are you still in it right now?
I'm not. No. But if I ever feel like a couple months ago, I felt like my wife actually said, hey, maybe you should go talk to somebody.
Yeah.
You know, it just gets to a point of you kind of feel overwhelmed, and to a point of I can talk to her about a lot of more stuff than I could prior. But man, she's got her own stuff going on.
Sure. Yeah.
Like she's the other 50% of the house.
Yeah.
Probably, let's be honest, like 80% of the house, you know? But it was another one of those things where maybe I should go back kind of situation. And man, if there's an app now, sign me up.
Yeah.
You know?
How did you meet your wife?
We went on a trip. We went on a trip to Lake Powell. A bunch of us got together. Oddly enough, one of my best friends growing up, it was her cousin.
Okay.
Which is, I guess, now kind of my cousin.
Yeah.
In-law.
Sure.
Didn't know each other. All of us were like, hey, we're gonna rent this big houseboat in Lake Powell. Let's all get together. And it was just a big group of people who got together and met down there. And then once we got back from the trip, started hanging out, and man, here we are.
Yeah.
You know?
What was it about her that was maybe different that kind of made you think, oh, I'm starting to go down this path?
Sure.
Yeah.
You start to get a sense of when you always just want to be together. When the energy is just a constant, I just like being with this person.
Yeah.
Right. Nothing felt forced. Nothing felt off. Nothing felt awkward. I mean, there are awkward things, right? As you get to know somebody.
Yeah.
But just in the sense of she's someone who I just vibe with very well.
Yeah.
And I feel like everybody has or will find that vibration. It's hard to explain, right? When you just
it's a weird chemical thing almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of these things where you just feel it and you just roll with it. It doesn't feel forced.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I always talk about, like, with my friends, how the most important thing, like, you look at all the things you want in a partner and you could put them in order. But to me, like, the most important thing by a landslide is personality, right? And of course you have your non-negotiables. You have, like, oh, I want her to be, you know, religious like me or spiritual like me, or I want her to want kids like I do, or all these other things. But before all of that, you have to have that personality that you vibe with.
Yeah.
And you have to be like, you kind of have to just think they're awesome, right? For like,
it's so true.
For lack of a better term, like you kind of just want them to be somebody that you want to be around all the time.
Yeah.
Like a best friend.
Yeah.
Like, I view it like, yeah, there's a million differences, but I think there's a lot of good analogs with friendship and dating and romance, because you look at, like, your best guy friends ever.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they annoy you sometimes. Yeah, they have their glaring weaknesses.
Yeah.
But, like, you want to hang out every day.
Totally.
Right? You want to talk about anything.
Yeah.
You want to go to them with anything. And they might have their little quirks that kind of piss you off.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you're like, that's my guy.
Yeah.
You know? And I feel like it has to be that way with your spouse.
Yeah, there's something to be said about marrying your best friend.
Yeah.
And it's when people kind of get pushed back to that, I want to know why. And I want to try and get into that further with them, because, man, when you come up against hard things and you have a spouse, such as our case, who literally falls apart,
mm-hmm.
who's now not pulling any of their weight in this thing that you have put together and made a home and had children and you know, they're half you and half them. And you've done these things and all of a sudden they kind of check out.
Mm-hmm.
You really learn like this, our relationship is so much stronger because of what it had to flex through. And you know, I will never shy away from telling so many people that she is like that foundation that I hope I could be for her.
Yeah.
If she ever went through anything like this, if she ever needed anything. And it's like that partnership, right? It's like that best friend who you can be yourself with, who you can lean on in literally any moment, who you want to call or text and be like, the funniest thing just happened.
Yeah.
Or, you know, put on sweats and a hoodie at night and just watch a show.
Yeah.
Right? Like just hang out, eat whatever you want, you know, do all the best friend things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, and for me, that's her.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I think sometimes men, especially, they worry like, yeah, what will my girl think about me if she knew I was, you know, struggling with this or that? But it's like, you look at, again, the analog with friendship, you look at if a best friend of yours was having a mental breakdown, would you think any less of him? Or would your immediate thought be, let me go be there with them. Let me go help them. Let me be whatever support I can, right? Like that's how it should be with your spouse, you know? And you know what? Like, and we don't need to fully go down this rabbit hole, but I feel like some of the onus is on the women to not have like 100% of the relationship tied around the man's ability to provide. Don't you think?
Yeah.
Because yes, it's important, especially when you have kids and you have a home and a mortgage and all these things. But as a man, I feel like you can't feel like your love is predicated on your paycheck or your love is predicated on your ability to make your family feel safe. Like those things are important, but what about me as a person?
Yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah. That's a huge aspect because at that point, you know, is it really love?
Yeah. Is it unconditional or is it pretty darn conditional?
Yeah. Which it sounds like.
Yeah. Let's say you, in this worst moment of your life, let's say you ended up getting fired and you have to, whatever, you go on unemployment, you guys lose your house. Like, is your wife going to leave you or is she going to stay by your side?
Yeah. I would like to think she'd stay by my side.
Yeah. It's a rhetorical.
Yeah. You know, but I think that's where where society continues to, we're starting there. I feel like we're starting to, because I agree with you. It can't, we need women's help.
Yeah.
We need help with this almost shift in that perspective, because you think about our parents and our grandparents' generations. That's how it was.
Yeah. Hey,
honey, I'll see you later. Off to work from a 9 to 5. And the women would stay home and cook and clean and take care of the kids. And
back then you couldn't text while you're at work.
No, that's what I mean. It was such a different time, a different time of generation and world and society in general of how we interacted. And here we go, fast forward, where you can literally call, text, FaceTime, email. You can get a hold of anybody, anytime, anywhere. And for somebody to say, hey, it's 100% on you. It's not feasible.
Yeah.
Now. And if it is, well, where's the give and take on it?
Yeah.
Right. Well, if it's 100% here, then what's over here that we can work together? It truly has to be this partnership. It truly has to be, you know, I a little bit ago on the healing journey again, you know, over the years we've been married 14 years now. And of the 14 years, we sit here and we've worked through a lot of different things. And we've gotten to a point where we try and tell each other, we know to a point where each other are in the day of, hey, if I come home and I can just, she tells me, say, hey, it's been a day.
Yeah.
The partnership side of this is, all right, I'll take the kids out back.
Yeah.
It's dad time.
Right.
Because I love her so much. She's my best friend. She's my partner. She needs a break.
Yeah.
Like, even though I've had a day, it's a different day.
Sure.
It's a different kind of, I've had adult time. Right. I've had conversations. I've had, all these things. But hey, I'll take them out back, and you go for a walk.
Yeah.
You go to the gym. You take 15 minutes and do whatever you need, or however long you need, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And we kind of figure that out as to what the day has and what's going on, but vice versa. When I come home and it's like, hey, I just need a minute, and we, to your point, that's where, this 100%, it's all provider, and it's 100% all, activities that the women need to do. It's like, we got to mix and mingle some of these together, because it's this day and age, especially now, if both partners need to work.
Yeah.
Especially with what we're, economic times that we're in and things like that. And a lot of the time both have to work. So it's like, okay, how do we both connect with each other?
Yeah.
Still, how do we both have each other's backs? How do we both still continue to want to work at this together? And maybe that's where some of that falls short.
Yeah. What do you feel like because how long have you been married?
Yeah, almost 14 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you feel like, maybe even in the last couple of years, have you improved on the most as a husband? Compared to those early years where there's, there's some learning curve, and there's, some newness about it.
I almost want to joke and be like, not very much. No, I think communication. And she would be surprised actually maybe by that comment, but I feel like communication is, again, we internalize everything as men. She will literally be talking, and internally I am saying, awesome. Yes, that's great. I love that. Internally I'm answering in my mind, but I'm not verbalizing.
Yeah. And
so she's rattling off the things, or she's telling a story or whatever she's saying. And then it's like, on her end, she thinks he's not even listening.
Yeah.
On her end, I'm talking to a wall, right? But I internally am like, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying these things. And how many times have I learned to just give something back? Open my mouth and just say, that's awesome. Or vice versa on the other end. Open up more to her and tell her how I'm feeling or what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Because I am much more of like an internal thinker before I speak, whereas she thinks out loud.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it's a different dynamic, and she knows that, and we laugh about it all the time. But that's one of the biggest things that in life in general, think about all the problems that we probably could avoid and solve with more communication.
Yeah, totally.
The lack of communication across the board.
Yeah, I think the less you communicate, the more you resent.
Sure. The more that you guess, the more that you guess on, I think he must feel this way.
Yeah, because
they must think this, or maybe they must think that.
Yeah, if you come home from work and she's had a day, and she wants a break, but she doesn't communicate that to you, and so she doesn't get that break.
Yeah.
And now she's just thinking, like, why does he think like I don't deserve a break, or what? Like, what's his problem? He comes home and he just wants to like hang with us and rile up the kids when they're already crazy and bouncing off the walls. Like, but if she doesn't communicate that, like, you're not a mind reader. But maybe, she wants you to be a mind reader a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think we all do that in relationships. We're like, you know me so well. You should know this.
You should. Yeah.
Right. You should know this is how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you should pay attention a little bit, and be a little bit more cognizant of things, but it's also on you if you don't communicate, your desires and your frustrations and stuff.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things I've learned over the last couple of years, for sure. Not just in my marriage, just as a person in general. Especially in post breakdown and in the healing process of truly just going back to the thought of, you never know what tomorrow will hold. You never know what tonight will hold. And if you left the house that morning and you didn't say something that you should have, and you don't ever see that person again, and that's happened before, you hear stories of that, the type of weight that will put on somebody, or the type of regret, or the type of feelings that leaves, the unspoken words. I think that's one of the saddest things in life.
Yeah.
Is realizing that there were tons of unspoken words, and it's out of fear, it's out of spite, it's out of worry, it's out of self preservation. It's out of a lot of things, right? That we don't say things that we hopefully could and should. And I'm still not the best at it, but I've tried to be more of, hey man, I really liked what you said.
Yeah.
Hey man, thank you for doing this. Or hey, thank you for just simple, like, if you'd be shocked at how you could change someone's day by just a quick thank you. Hey, thanks for doing that. I really appreciate that. Hey, thanks for this. I noticed more effort. Hey, thank you. Just simple things like words matter in such a way that I don't know, especially nowadays with the social media side. And it's sad because people get away with a lot more than they should.
Yeah.
For better or for worse, right? The social media side of, you can rattle off something, just one of the meanest comments ever, close out of the app and go on throughout your day.
Yeah.
But the person on the receiving end, maybe it ruins their day.
Right.
Maybe it ruins their week, their month, years, whatever.
Yeah.
It could be that detrimental in that time. And so the communication side of life is so interesting to me because it's real time. And it has such weight that I don't think we truly realize, nor we could ever try and utilize.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I love about the current stage we're in society, and a lot of people talk about how horrible everything is now, but I think a lot of things are amazing about the time we live in, right? But I love texting because I feel like there's a lot of ways to really deeply communicate how you feel via a text that maybe is harder to do in person.
Oh, I totally agree. Yeah.
Or with and maybe with your spouse, it should be in person, but maybe you're out of town for work and you're so busy you don't have time for a 20-minute hash it out phone call. But you can send a kind of long text and be like, hey, I'm sorry, I feel like I was a little short with you earlier. I've just been stressed about this, but I love you and I miss you and blah, 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 right? And for me, I try to do this with friends. If I feel like there was ever any tiny bit of bad blood or frustration about something I did, as I go home, I try to be like, oh, maybe I should shoot him a text, this preemptive apology just in case.
Sure.
Right. And I think sometimes a phone call or waiting till you see him in person maybe feels a little silly or a little dramatic or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's so easy to just shoot off a text. And so I think, I think it's just a great way to kind of extra communicate sometimes.
Yeah. I It's funny. I agree 100% because it's almost like becoming a lost art to do face-to-face conversations. And there was a lot of studies with like the younger generation of having actually social anxiety of just hanging out
right,
or sitting down and having conversations. But if you read their texts, the emotion that's in there, the little details of how things are phrased or how things are worded, or a ... or just a period, or right. There's so much emotion in those. And I think that's probably why we love books so much as humans, is you can put so much more into reading those. And so I love that aspect of being able to communicate more openly nowadays.
Yeah, totally. What is like, how much do you value male friendship?
Yeah.
How important is that to you?
It's something that more men need to figure out. My wife calls it guy time. Hey, go have some guy time.
Yeah.
It's a way this is where, bringing it back to our conversation earlier, how you mentioned something about women being able to open up more. I love the quote that's been around for ages now, but it was one of the UFC fighters who recently brought it more to light, that I'd rather have my friend cry on my shoulder than me cry at his funeral.
Yeah.
And that cut me deep to a point of where I always want to check in on guy friends.
Yeah.
I always want to hang out with them in terms of there's just a different vibe of hanging out with the wife and things like that. But then you go out with guys and it's just guy time. It's just having fun. It's talking about similar things or bouncing things off about work or about kids or about life in general.
Yeah.
And it's this almost communicative vibe and feel. I put a lot of stock and effort, and I could probably do a lot better at it. But I think it's super important for guys to have more. We need guy friends.
Yeah.
We need friends they don't have to be similar to us.
Yeah.
Some of the funniest guys I hang out with are not like me at all.
Yeah, they're weirdos.
Yeah. But it's a blast because they make you laugh, or they make you think, they make you learn. There's so many. We're all so different.
Yeah.
And I take the again, optimism, glass half full. Like, why wouldn't you, at least one or two guys, go hang out?
Yeah.
Go find those friends who will let you truly say how you're feeling. Now, easier said than done, right? I feel like another big thing that's going on today is that a lot of guys don't have guy friends.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure why that is. I'm not sure. A lot of parents I talk to, a lot of things I read and watch online, it's like, hey, guys would rather just go play video games.
Yeah, yeah.
Guys would rather just go, it's almost like this isolation thing's happening because it's easy.
Right.
And who am I to, judge that? It probably is easier.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's so much joy and happiness that can be found in having other friends, other guy friends.
Yeah. Yeah, they're lifelines for me.
Yeah.
And I count myself very blessed in the friendship department. I think I've just been lucky.
Awesome.
Right. But for me, I have a lot of friends for different things, like I have buddies that the only thing we ever really do is we weightlift together.
Yeah.
Right. Or I have buddies that really the only activity we do is get lunch sometimes.
Yep.
And then I have some homies that I do everything with and I go on trips with and, but I think I just feel like I'm in a spot. And again, I feel like it's by the grace of God that anything I'm going through, I feel like I know a friend I can talk to about it. Like, I have a friend I can call right now. I have a friend that I could say, hey man, I need you to come over right now. I'm in it,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
But if you don't have that, or you feel like I'm going through something, who in the world could I call? Especially if you're single, you know, you don't have a family base. Like, I don't know how you get through some things, honestly.
Yeah, I don't either. And that's one of the hardest parts for me about reading some of those things online is like, hey, I'm 21 and I don't have any friends.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I'm 19, I'm 22. That younger generation, they don't. And so that's where I'm like, hey, go to a spot, just go out and go to somewhere that could interest you. Go to a concert.
Yeah.
Go to the gym. Go to a bar if you want to. Go somewhere, a sporting event, somewhere that there are other guys there, excuse me, and that could have, like, you never know. You never know. Just go be with people. And you'd be surprised that at these events, especially like sporting events, if you're there, hopefully you're rooting for the home crowd, because otherwise, you might get razzed a little bit. But it's like a all-inclusive feeling.
Yeah.
Right. And you'll talk to guys, and they'll at these sporting events, like, they'll open up and they'll give you a high five if there's, a good play or whatever. Right. So if there's anybody out there who, hears this or listens to this or sees this, I go give it a try.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy how, I don't know what it is about the male species, but we are so, like, and I know it's not for everyone, but I think like playing sports is like the easiest way to make friends.
It is.
It
is. It's this camaraderie. It's this like almost family feeling. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, I got your back. You got mine, because we're gonna win this together. Right. It brings out that competitive vibe within us in a good way.
Yeah, but even like a game, less team oriented, like golf or something. Sure. Like, if you find another guy that likes golf and you like golf, like you can be friends.
Yeah,
you can figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you all of a sudden have a million obscure things that you have in common. Mm-hmm. These obscure interests, and it's funny. The other day I was at the gym by myself, and I just asked this random dude to spot me on bench.
Yeah,
and I was like, hey dude, I'm gonna try to do a PR right here. I was like, I know it's not much weight, but I know. And he was jacked, this jacked black dude.
Well, you got to ask those guys, right? Yeah. Like, hey man, will you spot me?
Yeah, I know it's going to be an easy spot for him. But I was like, yeah, I'm just going to try to do, I think I can just try to do one or whatever. And so I do it. And he's like, I do it like not fairly easily, but I get it. And he's like, hell yeah, bro. And he pushes me like he's excited. And I was just like, oh dude, it's so funny how if I really needed to, I could probably kind of strike up a friendship with this guy. Yeah. Like I didn't really need to, but I appreciated the love. And
that's where the men and women are so different.
Yeah.
In that regard. Mm-hmm. We can vibe over just the smallest of things. And I feel like sadly women are a little bit less able to do that for whatever reason. And some can, totally. But guys in general, like, you wear a certain sports hat or a certain team on your shirt or something like that, you can strike up a conversation very easily. And it's one of these things where that's what we can do. And that's where I want the younger generation to know that it's that easy, but it's not easy.
Yeah.
Like I get it. But if you want that, it's you can go out and try and connect with other guys pretty simple.
Yeah.
In just the smallest of simplest ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just a few more questions, we'll wrap up. When you're in just the absolute doldrums of your situation and things are dark and you're, like you said, like you're laying down and you almost can't communicate with anybody. what's your advice to someone that feels like I'm in such a bad way, like I don't have the strength to go find a therapist. I don't have the strength to tell my spouse I'm like bordering on feeling suicidal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's your advice to somebody that's just kind of at the rock bottom and they've never been there before, so they don't know how to deal with all these new feelings?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. And all of a sudden I feel myself back in it. Like it almost brings me to an emotional state because it's heavy, man. It's dark. And the first thing I would say to them is just keep going. You got to hang on. For the most tragic thing that could ever happen is to stop a lifeline that has so much potential still.
Yeah.
And when you're in the thick of it, when you feel no hope, it's extremely hard. But take it one day at a time. Because in those days, I remember specifically saying out loud, man, I wish it was 6 months later.
Yeah. Let me just get through this.
Yeah, man, yeah. I wish I could fast forward 6 months from now.
Mm-hmm.
And, here we are 2 years later. But in those times, just go to bed and get up tomorrow. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Everything could get better from one phone call, one text.
Yeah. Someone
could come check in on you. I also fell back on if there's any type of spiritual aspect that I pulled in God, because that was the one thing that I felt as if I had yet to fully try.
Because he was always there in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
But maybe you never gave it your everything.
Yeah, I never truly tested that out to the fullest of I have nothing left mentally.
Yeah.
Right? I have nothing left to lose, because for me, everything had been lost. And so I gave it up. I said, you know what, God? Whatever you need.
Yeah.
I gave it back to him. And I pulled out scripture. And I said, you know what? I got nothing to lose. And so I started to build that pillar. And I think that's one of the biggest things as well, is you see a lot of people. It's interesting. You see a lot of celebrities nowadays who said, I spent my whole life chasing the money, the fame, the parties, everything that they could have. And all of a sudden there was nothing there when I got it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you hear about like a conversion story to Christianity that they've had. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden they have found something in life, whatever it is, the meaning to them. And so that was one of the biggest things for me as well, is I finally said, I need a deeper meaning for my life. Mm-hmm. Because if I don't find one, I don't think I can, there's no point.
Yeah.
And so for anybody else who sees this or hears this, that give it a try.
Yeah.
If it ends up not being for you or whatever that is, totally fine. Mm-hmm. But for someone who was in that spot, who has a story of, I tried it and it's truly one of a foundation non-negotiables now, of just a daily trying to center myself and just be a good person. Just try and be like, you know what? Hey, if God was here, I maybe make him a little happy that I did that, or maybe it put a smile on his face that tried to help somebody or held a door or just trying to be a good person in general.
Yeah.
Right. And that brought a lot deeper rooted meaning to life and presence.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah. Awesome. Tell me a little bit about your hoodie. I feel like that's kind of your mantra.
Yeah. My hey man.
Yeah.
My whole life I realized that's just something I say to people at the gym every morning. Hey man, how are you? At work, hey man, nice to see you. How's your day going?
Yeah.
It's one of these things where I feel like I wish more and more people would just say to each other, hey man, how are you?
Yeah.
It's and so I just kind of ran with it once the healing journey started, and I got myself to a position where I wanted to start to open up and talk about it. Again, it's more of that empathy side was pulled out of me and saying, just check on people.
Yeah.
One of my favorite shirts that I love. It's from the Till Valhalla company, and it's a company who is for servicemen and women who have passed away but left family behind, and all their T-shirts and all their swag and stuff goes towards helping support those families in a way. And on the front, the shirt says "Be kind," and on the back, it says, "Everyone is fighting a battle you know nothing about."
Yeah.
And I came across that during my journey of healing, and I bought like 2 or 3 of them. So I was like, that's a shirt that I'm going to just wear.
Yeah. And
I can't tell you how many people who have randomly, I just had a guy 2 days ago come up to me in the morning in the gym and said, hey, I really appreciate your shirt. And I, pulled the earbud out. I was like, hey, what? And he's like, I really appreciate your shirt.
That's cool.
And I was like, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I honestly think that if we truly knew what people were going through on a daily basis, the world would be such a kinder place.
Yeah.
A more understanding place.
Yeah, it would be more gentle.
Yeah, absolutely. There would be so much more of all-encompassing, how can I help you because I'm going through the same thing. But we put up those guardrails, we put up those, and sometimes for it's fine, it's for reasons, but even if just a little bit more of hey man, how are you?
Yeah.
How can I help you in a way, small or large, right? I just this feeling of again, trying to just be a good person and help others.
Yeah. Yeah. I say we combine our sweaters to make it say, hey man, I love you, say it back.
We totally should.
Mine's a little needy,
I love, but that's the best part. It has both ends of that spectrum.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Okay, man. My last question for you is, if we could kind of switch roles and you're the podcaster, you got one question for me. What do you got for me?
Yeah.
I know you don't even know me, but
no, I love the question. How do you think we can, as men, continue to help each other?
I think one of the best things that you just barely touched on is reaching out to the homies. For me, I want to, whenever the thought comes to me, I don't always do well at this, but whenever the thought comes to me, hey, you should reach out to so-and-so, to do it right then and there, And I think whether you believe in God or not, I feel like sometimes those thoughts and impressions come into your mind and heart for a reason, and those people need to be reached out to. And I feel like you can follow your heart, and sometimes it doesn't need to be like, hey bro, how you doing? It can just be like, hey dude, I haven't seen you for a while, like let's catch up, or let's go get some lunch, or like, hey, I saw you just had a baby, like let's talk about fatherhood. Like you can approach it a million ways, but I think it's easy when you're wrapped up in your own busy, chaotic life and you've got your own problems to be like, yeah, like I love my homie Joseph, but We haven't talked for 6 months, but like, I'm sure he's doing fine. He doesn't need me, and we both have our busy lives. I'm sure I'll see him when I see him. But I love the idea of, no, like, I'm thinking about Joseph right now. I'm going to let him know. And maybe he doesn't even need it, but gosh, it feels good when a friend reaches out and is like, hey, man, I was thinking about you. That feels awesome. I love that. I can't get enough of that. If I got texts like that every single day, it would make my day every single time, whether I'm going through something or not. Like, just somebody recognizing that I'm on their mind and I'm someone that's important to them in some small capacity. It means the world to me. So I think if men can swallow the ego a little bit and not worry about being the one that reaches out, be the one that reaches out. Like, I have friends that I know if I never reach out to, I'll never see again. I'll never hear from again.
Totally.
And it's not because they don't care. That's just kind of their MO. And maybe they don't need friendship as much as I need it. Maybe they're busier than me. Maybe they suck at texting, right? There's a bunch of reasons, but I'm not willing to just throw that friendship away because of my ego, because I'd rather wait till they reach out because I'm always the one that reaches out. Who cares, right? If you're a friend of mine, like, it shouldn't matter who reaches out. So, yeah, when a homie's on your mind, hit up the homie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's huge. That's actually one of the best things, one of the best pieces of advice. I think it's so underrated.
Yeah.
They pop into your mind for a reason. Like you said, whether you believe whatever reason they popped in, whether it was God putting it there or some other reason. Yeah. It's incredible to see how many guys actually in that moment need it. Yeah. Because if on the other side, you hear those stories where you didn't get a chance to talk to him again. Yeah. Because he's not here anymore. Yeah. And how many times, male suicide is 2-3 times higher than the female side. Yeah. And, we sit here and wonder why. And there are a lot of reasons why, but I'd be hard pressed to bet that a big reason is that we're just lonely. Yeah. Like we talked about, we internalize and we just disappear. Yep. Check on the homies. Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah. And, it's funny, like, I had this post a month ago or something where I was really vulnerable and was tearing up. And it's funny. I went through, it went a little bit viral, and I went through and I read every single comment. There was probably like 1,500 comments. And I bet there was 1, maybe 2 negative comments out of all of those. Like, I think people worry about being vulnerable, thinking people are going to make fun of them or they're going to like think less of them. But I got nothing but an outpouring of love, and from the most obscure corners of the earth, and from really rugged, tough looking guys, and so I think sometimes people wonder, like, they struggle to connect with people and they struggle to form friendships and meaningful relationships. And I'm telling you, if you lean in with vulnerability, like, people will relate. If you tell people what horrible things you're going through, you'll be surprised at how many people will be like, oh, bro, I've been there. Yeah. Same thing.
Oh, absolutely. That was one of the biggest things that stuck out to me. Yeah. When I started opening up, how many men were just like, oh man, I feel the same way. Or, hey, I've been there before. Or just in general, just felt the sense of, yeah, I kind of know what you're going through. Yeah. Whether it's not very specific, but in general, right? And that common denominator that pieces us together, whether it's men or just human beings in general. Yeah. And it's we'd be surprised, like you said, at how many people just are going through the same stuff.
Yeah, totally. Well, bro, thanks so much for coming on.
Hey, man, like I said, it's been a minute that we've been trying to do this, but I am sincerely grateful to have been a part of it with you.
Awesome, man.